Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Dan.
Nice to see your face.
I know, you too. I always talk to all these artists on the phone and I never really get to see anyone in person. So it's kind of
Right.
fun to do these
Yeah. Yeah, same here.
chats. Yeah. So I love your studio.
Thank you. It's kind of a lot of stuff going on. I'll give you the quick pan here.
Yeah, give us a quick look. Now, is this part of your house or is this a separate?
This is a separate building. Yeah. This is yeah, it's just a separate building that we put up that houses here. Well, I can do this later too. So anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
so
chat about the show and then whatever time we have, maybe you can give us a little more of a
sure, that sounds fine. Is this
thing.
background too crazy? Should I simplify it a little bit?
No, I think it looks great.
Okay.
Kind of shows the life of the artist there. I like it.
Good.
So for your show with Meyer, The Promise of Dawn, Moments of Beauty by Daniel Gerhartz, I thought we could just start by talking about that title. And I know that's Moments of Beauty, and that whole theme is kind of something that's central to your work overall. So not too big of a departure here for the show, but
Right.
I thought maybe you could just talk a little bit about that influence as far as this exhibition, but also just your work in general.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Um, Everything that I do in terms of my work, I hope reflects and sends out a message of hope. In this world, as we all know, it's can be pretty tough, and it's you know I need images and music and literature and cinema or whatever stories that inspire hope. The story of Les Mis, which I depicted a few years ago in paint. I just absolutely love the story of redemption and hope, and the good guy wins in the end. And, but really, it's about hope. It's about knowing that good will prevail, and so that's what I try to do in my work, whether it be with a really literal subject, as in the piece of shelter that's in this show, or if it's simply a still life or a landscape that's depicting beauty, which I also see as a message of hope. Why else is it there? It's there to uplift us and to encourage us. And anyway.
And that piece that you mentioned, Shelter, is such a beautiful piece and a powerful image for this show. And I know, I mean, it's very impactful right now with current events, but I know it's also models that you've used in the past and just something that's very true to your work, regardless of that. And the direct inspiration I know came from something very specific. So I wondered if you could talk a little more about that piece and the psalm that it's connected with.
Sure.
Play that out for us.
There is a Psalm 91 speaks about being protected by our Heavenly Father. And that particular psalm speaks of that He protects us kind of in the shelter of His wings. I love the imagery that conjures up when I read that. Certainly you think of strength and power and beauty. And so I've been wanting to depict that in paint for several years. And a lot of times these ideas take quite a while to germinate. This one did. Finally, the time was right to do that. I started it probably, I don't know, I started gathering the ideas and did that first initial sketch, which actually is right here.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I was just in my workroom, and I grabbed a Sharpie marker and scratched this. You see that goose that's up on the
Yep.
right up here
Yep.
above my head. I was painting that at the farm one day years ago. This digresses a bit, but I'll get back to the other one. Painting that particular goose at this farmer's barnyard, and it was a beautiful creature, and I painted it, and the farmer came walking out after I was done and said, "Well, you're just in time. I'm going to butcher them this evening." Oh, wow. Well, so he sold me a few, and I had them immortalized. And so I've used that particular goose and its wings for many pieces. Anyway, so I walked past that one day and just got a glimpse of it, and that song kind of came into my mind, and I just sketched this out, which is just this vast wing and two figures kind of huddled together underneath the shelter of the wing. And so from this, so I sat on this for about 2 months, and then I was, the time was finally right when I gathered our daughter and her cousin, and they both modeled for me. So I set the wing up and lit it the way I wanted to light it. And then I set the figures up. And I think Meyer has the YouTube video that kind of shows the process of how I designed it and set it up with the girls. And anyway, it's gives you a little.
Do that with a lot of your pieces, right? Set up the models, take photographs, and then paint from those.
Right. So I will take photographs of them, not necessarily to work from the photographs, but just to design the piece. Particularly with young kids, they can't hold, particularly in an embrace like that, they can't hold this, pensive pose with their hands exactly in the right spot every time. So I photograph it, and then I design it in Photoshop, and then get it figured out, and then draw it in, and then hire the models back, and then paint them from life as best I can. So it's a kind of a mixture of mediums to come to a decent end, an end that lives and breathes and feels lifelike. I need to have that from life experience for that. I can't simply just snap a picture, sit down, and paint it because there's just never enough information in the photo. They have to be right in front of me. That wing I painted from life, it was sitting right in front of me. When you look at the painting, there's so much nuance of color and light that one of my favorite landscape painters spoke of landscape painting, and he said, and he was talking about painting a rock. He said, our minds are just way too small to invent even the nuance on a rock. And that is so true. Yeah. There is so much beauty and subtlety in this created realm we live in that, with the light changing on the subject and everything else, it's just, I need to see it. So that's why I go through the pains of hiring the models. They go home, I bring them back, I have them back again. And it's just, it's a lot of extra work, but it's always worth it. So, and that's what I certainly.
Too. I think that shows up in the paintings as well.
Oh, no doubt. Right. The same is true with the landscapes or the still lifes. They're for the most part done right from life. So.
And so will you show us, talking about how you work with the models, can you maybe pan over and show us that scene that you kind of have set up there where you have the models?
Sure. Right over here, you mean?
Yeah, I saw the just kind of drapery and things over there.
Yeah, let's spin around over here. And so just yesterday I was in, and I had a model sitting up on this chair over here. Mm-hmm. And sitting here, and this is north light coming in. And I actually had an incandescent lamp on her as well, which was this really warm, putting the camera in a little closer here, really warm light on the model. Oh, yeah. And so I painted from life. We were actually getting ready to, I'm going to make some videos on some techniques and things like that. So I was just kind of doing a trial run with that. But this is typical to have the model set up, and you can see this will be a little clunky and jerky, but I will show you the setup here. You can see that.
Oh, yeah.
palette and the brushes and mediums. And this little pan of the studio too here. A couple other portraits that I did recently.
It makes sense that you would have kind of a two-part session with them, to have kind of figure out the composition and the setup, and then have them back to actually do the painting. I think that
Yeah, I always feel like I need to do that. Well, not always, but often I need to have some, when the models are here, I don't get enough, I can't settle down enough to really design the piece. I feel like I feel like I'm really wasting their time if they're just sitting over there while I'm at the computer for 2 hours,
Right.
and I would rather be a little more efficient with their time and mine. So
Mhm.
that's why I normally have them back. So sometimes, I'll just go out, have a model and I'll, just paint from life. If it's not that involved, if it's just a simple scene where someone is just out, on location or something.
And there was another painting in the show. Is this called Peacock? And
Yes.
I wonder if you could talk with us about that one. That's a portrait, and I'm wondering how you kind of set that up and what was kind of the story behind that piece.
Well, anyway, I was at the piece Peacock. I was visiting I believe it's in Washington, D.C. It may be in New York. I get my museums mixed up, but it was James Whistler's Peacock room. It was a setting, a room that he had designed that had these gilded panels and gilded shelving and a lot of Asian pottery and Asian artifacts. And it was just this beautiful room that he had designed. So I step into this thing and you're transported to a different time and place. And I really love the aesthetic that Whistler had created. And when I was in there, I thought, wow, this would be an amazing place to paint a figure against this backdrop. Well, I took a number of photographs of it, and then it's a piece that I've been wanting to do for some time. Finally, I felt like this piece would be a good addition to the show. So I set up our daughter Sophia, and she modeled for me in front in the studio, and then I superimposed her in front of those screens in Photoshop.
The lighting in that piece is just beautiful. A lot of your images kind of have that glow to them with the light, and almost like that golden light that comes in from the background, and it's really beautiful.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, it is captivating light, isn't it?
Yeah. And then you also in the show have still lifes and landscapes. So I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about some of these kind of moments of beauty within some of these still life pieces. I know we had talked about the note of love painting with the lilacs and the kind of handwritten note, and that kind of had some personal sentiments as well. And
sure.
You want to chat a little bit about
that?
Yeah,
I could. I have the setup that I use for the moment for the daffodil piece right here.
Yeah.
I have it's a sculpture stand that I converted into a still life setup. Can you see it?
Yeah, yeah.
But so I set the still life up here, and we can spin it and put it in any light that I want, and then just paint from life. So again, just gathering objects. The flowers are dead and gone, but a lot of the other stuff remains from the piece. So it's really burned out here now.
Oh,
anyway,
and so that's the angel image then.
Yeah, it's a Abbott Thayer painting of one of his daughters that was painted well over. Was there a date on it? No. In the probably around 1900, so 100 plus years ago, and beautiful, beautiful piece. If you ever get to the Smithsonian, and it's in the American Museum, which is connected with the American Portrait Society or American Portrait Gallery. There's a collection of his work in there, and also at the Freer at the Smithsonian. His work is beyond beautiful, and anytime that I can copy another artist, not, in this case, the indication in the still life was very small. It's not like I'm copying his work. It was just but whenever I can get a sense for the tonality that this artist used, and then just kind of trying to mix a couple of those things, it's really, it's a good day. I learn a lot.
And looking at that still life setup, it's almost like you're kind of equal parts set designer as you are painter. You don't have any like theater background or anything, do you?
No, I don't. But I've had a lot of design training, and it's kind of all goes together. I think it's harmony, design, repetition, line, balance. So just trying to make it all work together.
And that also obviously plays into a lot of your landscape pieces. So, and in this show, a lot of your landscapes and kind of architectural work are from a trip that you took to France. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that and how that kind of influenced some of these pieces, particularly the different views you have on the Paris Opera. Just can you talk to us about some of those and how that influenced those pieces?
Yeah, I'd been, as an artist, going to France is kind of the dream trip.
Right.
To see all the museums and to see where a lot of my favorite artists had painted. And so last fall I had the opportunity to go there, taught a workshop for a few days with workshops in France, and then spent a few days in Paris. And when I did, my hotel was a block or two from the Paris Opera, so I would go over there in the evenings after the stuff during the day was through, and I would paint. As one of the pieces was captured the Paris Opera House at sunset, and then the other one was painted around 11 p.m. Streets were still bustling with people, and just a treat to paint out there, and to capture that grand architecture.
And you did it a couple different times. It looks like there's the evening at the Paris Opera, and then the Paris Opera House. So kind of different perspectives and different times of day that you're kind of presenting that.
Right. As the day before, or first day that I got there, I was kind of walking off the jet lag, and just walked around the town and saw some of the structures that I was, as I knew I wanted to paint the following day, and just scouted out some places. And so I had a pretty good idea the following day what I was going to do. And then thankfully the sun was still out, just to get that raking sunlight on the building for sunset. But then in the evening, it was, it's a beautiful evening to be out there as well. So.
And when you paint on while traveling like that, do you work out, this whole painting there, or do you do a series of sketches and studies to then kind of flesh out later?
Those two, 95% were painted on location. I did, just straighten a line or two, or clean a few things up when I got back. But those were primarily plein air sketches or paintings. And so. And the other piece, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
And there was another piece from France as well that I painted in I'm going to butcher the French, but it's Saint-Remy, that the place that Vincent van Gogh stayed for. I believe it was close to the end of his life. I think he spent almost a year there. It was either a convent or a monastery, I believe. I think it was also partially an insane asylum, or some sort of an asylum, and he was getting treatment, I think, there. Gorgeous facility. The courtyard that I painted in, with the light coming in, and was just absolutely beautiful. And then the two figures that I added in there were somewhat suggestive of maybe the inner turmoil that he must have been feeling during his time there. So the one is, darkness and light. The piece is called Where Vincent Walked Between Darkness and Light. So two figures robed in differing values. So
I love that. It's such kind of a subtle symbolism in that piece, and then also your brushwork and those colors worked into the light also kind of point to Van Gogh a little bit. I like that kind of.
I really gained a new appreciation for his work. I've always liked his work, but I really grew to love it when I was seeing some of his works, in France.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, you were obviously inspired by a lot of the architecture and the scenery. Did you to go into a lot of museums, I'm guessing? Were there any in particular artwork that you saw?
I didn't have a lot of time to go into. I certainly saw the highlights in France, in Paris, I mean. And I've always loved the French naturalists, Jules Bastien-Lepage, and kind of that ilk, which was a period just before Impressionism, where they were kind of breaking away from the academic figurative tradition and then bringing the figure outside to do these absolutely gorgeous, light-filled figurative pieces. If you ever get to New York, the piece Joan of Arc, which is Jules Bastien-Lepage's kind of claim to fame, his keynote piece, hangs at the Met in New York. So a must-see.
And then I love what you said when we were talking the other day about how in this show you also have a series of Wisconsin winter landscapes where you live, and that kind of brings balance to the warmth of southern France. Almost like we're looking at the show like one big composition, that it's balancing with the values.
That is so true, Kelly. And Jennifer, my wife and I, largely it's Jennifer's doing that. She will look, as I'm creating work, she will kind of pick and choose as to what works go together the best to really create a compelling exhibition in terms of how it's viewed as a whole. We realize that the show will only be briefly seen, in that light, but it's still really important. Mm-hmm. So yes, the Wisconsin landscapes, so as we were looking at most of the French pieces, they were very warm and yellow, and the light banging off of the stone buildings, and just beautiful color and light. And so the Wisconsin landscapes, the winter landscapes, were a great compliment to that. Yeah. Just in terms of
a lot of people really realize that the way that you approach just the body of work as a whole in that way, rather than just individual pieces.
Yeah, I think Jen, she spends a lot of time kind of working that out. So.
Yeah. And were you going to say something there? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I just said I thank Jen she puts quite a bit of time into designing those works. So, the exhibitions.
Does she help at all with your set composition as well?
Sometimes, yeah. I shouldn't say sometimes. I always bounce the compositions off of her to get her take on it, and she's always got great input. And so I'm really blessed to have her input, and her, she's got a great eye, and she's very well read, so she, just understands, human nature, and has a great heart. So it all kind of works together to be a good fit.
Yeah. And do you ever paint her? I know you paint your daughters. And
I have, yeah. I painted Jen many, many times. I've kind of had a tradition of painting she and all of our children. And so we've got one to go. We're done. It's got her and Sion to go yet. But yeah, so I painted Jen many, many times. So.
And so some of these Wisconsin landscapes, I thought maybe we could could look at as well. Looks like that the space in between is one of those, and where the pheasants fly. Are these some places that are close to your home that you kind
Yeah,
of visit
right.
on site?
The piece where pheasants fly is a place that I take our dogs out to run a lot, and so I was out one morning with them and just having a beautiful time. It was a gorgeous morning, and um, brought the dogs home and grabbed my easel and went back and did that sketch. And I was working up a little bit larger piece that I was wanting to actually paint one of my dogs, which will be um, he's hunting, and it'll be featured in the Pre West show this year. So
Yeah, so I mean, with all these different subject matters, you have the portraits and the landscapes and still life, with it all kind of having that connection of moments of beauty. That what kind of constitutes, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but for you, when you're out walking around the streets in Paris or walking your dogs, or what is it about those moments or those kind of like snapshots that you're just like, wow, I have to go back and get my easel and paint this, or like this is a scene that I want to paint. Like, what kind of constitutes that moment of beauty for you?
well, for me, it's almost always when you feel this rush of, or this wow moment
Hmm.
that you can't plan, you can't predict, or even, when you're listening to a piece of music, what is it about this certain movement in this piece, or these two or three notes that are vibrating together that sends goosebumps or chills down your back, and you don't really know why. Um, all of it is just absolutely blows my mind. The that beauty and harmony, just the vibration of our ear eardrums, or whatever's going on in our head, in our ears physically, or in our eyes, when we're seeing certain colors vibrate, or the way a line can work one against the other, as they kind of wind together down. And there's something about those rhythms and harmonies that can point you to something far beyond even that vibration. That's what I go for. Um, so, when I listen to a piece of music, and I often, when I hear a piece that really moves me, I often ask myself, what what would that look like in paint? How would that, how could I create that same sensation in paint? So then it's a study of harmony, study of line and design, and trying to come up with that rhythm that um, inspires. When someone sees it, they respond to it in that way. I can't come to the exact feeling that I may have had or whatever, but yeah, it gives me something to shoot for.
Hmm.
I and thankfully, when I've been at exhibitions, and or thankfully we get a lot of emails from people that see the work and are really moved by it. They tell me stories. They tell me how these pieces move them or what they mean to them, and I'm grateful that I can use this gift I've been given to touch people that way. I have really had nothing to do with it. I didn't do anything to deserve the gift. I have it. I'm using it. Thankfully, I can. Thankfully, that people support us so that I can continue to study. Just the fact that I can get up tomorrow and come back to the studio and not worry about, um, um, having to pay the bills another way. Many don't have that privilege. I'm really grateful for that. To just to be able to continue to study. Each painting is just further study, further development to hone the craft and bring it to a point where um, those lines and harmonies and vibrations continue to speak to people. So
It's kind of a lot of pressure to be painting such idyllic, naturally beautiful subjects. You do
You
very
know,
well at it.
thank you, Kelly. It can be, but I really, again, have nothing to, yes, I shouldn't say that I feel no pressure. I do feel pressure. Everybody does, but in the end, I realized too that it's not up to me
Mhm.
whether this piece sells or, it is always amazing to hear the stories of who ends up with the painting and, whether it be a print or an image, just an image of it or the original. It seems like that there is a specific person for these pieces, and it was meant for this person. Sometimes, like my favorite piece in the whole show may stick around for a year or two and not sell, and you kind of go, wow, I thought that was a decent piece. I'm surprised that one hasn't sold yet. But it's always waiting for the right person who it was destined for. And it's interesting to see how that all works out.
I love that. It's a nice reminder of why you're doing what you're doing when you hear those stories from collectors.
It really is. It really is.
I also love just that goose in the background. I keep looking at it, that you saved though they were going to be killed, and you have now put them in paintings, and they've kind of lived on in that way.
Well, I'm grateful to be able to, paint them from life. They're gorgeous creatures.
Is there anything else in your studio that you can show us, or any other props from other paintings in the show that you have sitting around that might be interesting?
Let me see here. Why don't I just give you a little quick tour? It's going to be I'm just carrying this webcam around here, so it's going to be a little jerky, but yeah, so what other props? I don't know. I'm just going to show you other things here. So there's a couple landscapes. It's not focusing. I've got just a lot of things sitting around, shelves filled with pots and, different pieces that I've gathered over the years. There's another duck up there. You can see him. There's two of them. See him up there.
So is that the wing in the video? It seemed like about Shelter. It seemed like the wing was so large, but is that the wing?
Yeah, it was this wing. I can show you here. I'll bring it down.
Oh wow! Okay, it is bigger than it looked in the background.
So I had it like this, but then I had it backlit.
Yeah.
So I had it sitting on a stand and then backlit. It's just, just this color and the light and design are absolutely amazing. So
yeah, that really is a beautiful composition, and just the colors that you bring into the light. It's not just gold; it's all these different colors layered together to kind of illuminate the whole piece, which I
thank you, Kelly.
Gives it that almost like spiritual kind of feeling to them.
To me, everything is spiritual. Light is a gift, and really. So anyway, I've done several paintings in this little entryway. Again, there's the still life. I was just going to show you the windows here.
Yeah.
So this is so those are the north
natural light coming
window. Yeah, those are the north windows that bring in all the beautiful light that I work with, and yeah. So here's a recent piece as well. Some of that same glowing light.
Oh
A
yeah, a
friend
lot
of
of
mine,
translucent kind of draping
yeah,
clothing a
a
lot.
friend of mine let me borrow some of her saris that she has. She's has a beautiful, a nice collection of them. So she shared those with me, and so I took advantage of using those beautiful fabrics and developed that piece among others. So
Well, this has been great, Dan. It's been cool to see your studio and talk about some of these pieces.
thank you,
So,
Kelly.
yeah.
You've always got great questions and seem to bring the best out of me in terms of
Oh,
helping
good.
remember why I did what I did.
Yeah,
So
there you go. You sometimes the artist can be so close to it that you kind of have to talk it out and have someone else say, "Oh, well, is that symbolic of this?" And you just, "Oh, well, yeah, I guess it is."
right, it really is. Yeah, it's so true.
Well, thanks for chatting with us today and looking forward to the show, which opens July 10th, I believe. Yes, July 10th.
Yes. Hmm.
So everyone to go see it at Meyer Gallery in person, and then it'll also be all online on the website. So you can reach out to Meyer Gallery if you want to see more work.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for your interest in my work and for your patronage. And I am truly blessed that you um, have shared your stories with me. And thank you for taking the time to watch this.